Hello everyone, welcome back to AVLOKAN IAS. In today's discussion, we take up a topic that has generated intense debate at the global stage. That is, India's stand in the recently adopted New York Declaration on Palestine. This move has surprised many, as India voted in favor of the resolution that strongly supported Palestinian statehood, raising questions about its foreign policy, balancing act, and strategic interests. Let us unpack this in detail. The New York Declaration was passed during a special session of the United Nations, where a large majority of countries voted in favor of strengthening Palestine's role and recognition in the international community. The declaration does not grant Palestine full UN membership, but it is seen as a significant step towards giving Palestinians greater legitimacy and diplomatic space. Interestingly, Israel and the US opposed the declaration, while India voted in favor of Palestine, joining a majority of countries in supporting their cause. To understand the weight of this decision, we need to trace India's historical position. Since independence, India has been one of the earliest supporters of Palestinian cause. In 1974, India became the first non-Arab state to recognize the Palestine Liberation Organization as the sole representative of the Palestinian people. In 1988, India formally recognized the State of Palestine. However, after the 1990s, with the establishment of full diplomatic ties with Israel in 1992, India has carefully balanced its relations with both sides, deepening strategic, defense, and technological cooperation with Israel, while continuing to provide political and moral support to Palestine. In recent years, India's tilt towards Israel has been visible, particularly under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel in 2017. At the same time, Modi also visited Ramallah in 2018, signaling that India remains committed to a two-state solution. But given India's closer defense ties with Israel, many assumed that New Delhi would either abstain or avoid strong pro-Palestinian stances in multilateral forums. That is why its vote in favor of New York Declaration has been described as surprising by many observers. The immediate context of this vote lies in the ongoing Israel Palestine conflict, especially the humanitarian crisis in Gaza following recent escalations. Civilian casualties and widespread destruction have pushed many nations to take firmer stances, and India's vote appears to reflect not only a reaffirmation of its traditional position but also a humanitarian concern. It sends a message that while India values its partnership with Israel, it does not support unilateral actions that disregard Palestinian rights. The position also has domestic and geopolitical dimensions. Domestically, India has a large Muslim population, and supporting Palestine resonates with long standing public sentiment and India's non aligned anti colonial legacy. Geopolitically, India's vote helps maintain strong ties with Arab world, particularly countries in the Gulf that are crucial for energy security, trade, and the welfare of millions of Indians there. Balancing relations between the West, Israel, and the Arab world is not just about diplomacy but about safeguarding vital national interests. Critics, however, argue that India's position seems inconsistent at times. For example, while India has condemned terrorism and supported Israel's right to defend itself, it has also been vocal about Palestinian statehood. This dual approach sometimes creates confusion about whether India is supporting decisively towards one side or trying to sit on the fence. Supporters of India's strategy counter this by saying that a balanced approach is the only way for India to protect its diverse interests without alienating any major power bloc. Another interesting angle is that India's rising global stature. As a country aspiring to play a bigger role in the world affairs, India cannot ignore humanitarian crisis. Voting for Palestine also allows India to position itself as a responsible global actor that speaks for justice and international law rather than being seen as merely aligning with the West. It strengthens India's voice in the global south, where Palestinian cause remains deeply symbolic of resistance against occupation and inequality. This raises the larger question of whether India's stand represents continuity or change. On one hand, it is very much in line with India's historical support for Palestine and the two state solution. On the other hand, given the recent closeness with Israel, it signals that India is carefully recalibrating its diplomacy to show independence of decision making rather than appearing to follow the US or Israel blindly. It highlights India's ability to engage with multiple poles of power, a trait that is becoming increasingly essential in the evolving world order. As the conflict in West Asia continues, India will likely face further tests in balancing its relations. Defense and technology ties with Israel remain critical, but energy security and diaspora interests link India heavily with the Arab world. The New York Declaration vote shows that India is willing to assert a nuanced position even if it is surprises some partners. In conclusion, India's vote in favor of Palestine at the end reflects a complex mix of history, humanitarian concern, domestic factors, and strategic balancing. It reinforces the principle of a two state solution while underlining India's independent foreign policy. For the global audience, it demonstrates that India's voice cannot be taken for granted. It will choose its stance carefully, guided by both the values and interests. This is it from my side. Thank you for watching AVLOKAN IAS. Do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone.